Technical difficulty there. Well, yeah, that's right. We was talking about, I had something come to me this week, and I failed to write it down. I've thought and thought and thought, try to think about what it is. But anyway, I feel like I have a message here tonight. I really do. And I want to thank all of you for coming out, and I'm going to ask you for your prayers. You know, I told Brother TJ just this week, I said, man, you're just really doing better. And I don't know if it's just praying for him or, you know, just the more you preach, the better you get. But he's getting better. But I'll tell you, you know, this is a congregation, and I've said it before, and I mean it, and I may fall on my face, but if you can't preach at Belmont, you can't preach. Now, that's just all there is to it. Most of the time, the Spirit's here, and it'll, you know, if you'll be attentive to the Holy Spirit, God will talk to you. And you know, I always pray for the preacher, that God, let him be your mouthpiece today. Preach just exactly what we stand in need of. And I've got a confession. Boy, I'm about crying out. Is this message here needs to be for me as much as anybody here tonight. And, you know, I believe I've had a lot of them that way. I mean, I'm telling you, you kind of apply to your life, I guess, you know, God knows. Maybe he wants me to line up a little better, you know. I got room for improvement. I ain't perfect by no means and never don't aim to be, but you know, but I ain't guilty of breaking. I went to church with a preacher one time, and he was a big, jolly, joking kind of guy, and he said, I broke every commandment except the one about thou shalt not kill, and said the gun snapped. So, you know, he'd been pretty rough in his day, so I ain't been that rough, but anyway. The title of this message tonight is an old song, old rock and roll song, says, can't get no satisfaction. And that's what I'm going to preach on tonight, no satisfaction. You know, there's so many people in the world that just flat aren't satisfied. They just, no matter what they got or where they're at, the situation they're in, they're the boss, they just ain't happy. They're not satisfied with it. The wife in your marriage, you get tired of your wives for some reason or another. Wives get tired of their husbands for some reason or another. You're not satisfied. And the reason for that is I'm right here, is you don't have Jesus in your life. I'm going to read the scripture here I found. It's over in Luke on the 15th chapter, and starts with the 17th verse. Very familiar scripture. It's usually you preach on this, you name it. I've got it right here on top of the Bible, the hog pen trail. It's about the prodigal son. You know, he wasn't satisfied. And when it came to and a certain man, about to read the wrong thing here. A certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, give me the portion of the goods that have fallen to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed the swine. Now, this is as low as a Jewish boy could get, fooling with a hog. That's right down there. I mean, I never thought nothing bad about hogs, but to them, that was been the low. But here's a young man. No doubt, this is a farming community mostly. Sounds like they lived on a good farm to me. Sound like Dad had a pretty good place there. Probably wasn't a slave driver. Probably, I know they had servants and whatnot. It says on in there, he said, come to himself, he said he would just make him a servant, later on. But he wasn't satisfied with that. And I know that there's so many people, so many young people, I guarantee you all know one or two or five that's young men and women that are kind of like this young boy is right here today, that just aren't satisfied. They're not happy. Dad helps them, mom helps them best can. Sometimes mom and dad can't help you, but you're still not satisfied. You're still looking for something. You've got an emptiness inside of you. And that emptiness is you don't have Jesus in your heart. They turn to drugs and sex, and that just doesn't get the job done. It works for a little while, but then in just a little while that wears off, and then you realize that you don't have anything substantial with your mate or the person you've been with. It's not like you love them. You didn't take them for a wife. You just kind of borrowed them for a little while, and it just leaves you empty. It leaves the girls empty. It leaves the boys. It doesn't do anything. It's just a temporary thing. There's abortion is TJ would just tell me is just off the chart in California now. 25% of the pregnancies are aborted. How many was it, DJ? 60-some? Six?
Number one state in the
yeah. Anyway, but that's just crazy that people they're just not satisfied. See, they have these children, they get pregnant, then they have no lifeline, they have no plan in their lives. They're just going through life helter-skelter to whatever bumps them around. Nothing, they're grabbing at their job, trying to get up the ladder there. Some of them become just workaholics. You know people that are like that. Some guys, I know a fellow that works at a farm, he's an old man now. Works himself absolutely to death. You couldn't say nothing to him about Jesus. He wouldn't even stop long enough to hardly say hello to you. And way up in his years, had a son that had a brain tumor, and got over it. But still has no idea, lives with a woman that he never did marry. If ever was a fella and probably owns 1,000 acres. No, he owns more than that. He owns 1,000 acres over in Buck. He owns 2,000 acres in Grayson County too. Very, very wealthy man, but he's not satisfied. You can tell by talking to him just a little bit that he ain't satisfied. He won't talk to you but just a minute till he's already jumping around here. You need to go over here and do that. Did you get this done? Did you fix that fence over there? Did that get that truck started? Did old combines in good shape? Just like that. I mean, he's nothing on any kind of an even scale with him. And how he's accumulated so much wealth, I don't know. I guess because he just worked like crazy. But it absolutely won't take nothing. Jimmy... Billy Graham said he never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. You don't take nothing with you out of this land, out of this world when you die. All you're going to take with you, or all you're going to have ahead of you, is what you've laid up in heaven, the work you've done for the Lord will meet you there in heaven. You know, you have a jewel or two maybe in your crown. I hope I have one too. Maybe, you know, I don't know. Some will be glittered up a lot. But the main thing that I aim to leave behind is I know where I'm going.
Amen.
You know, I don't want my children to wonder if Dad went to heaven or not. You know, my dad didn't leave an absolute slam dunk testimony behind. And I wasn't going to get over on this, but I've been doing a little studying on hell. Let me tell you what, people don't preach on hell no more. I told TJ, you don't never hear it preached on TV. They don't even say it. And very little, because, and now we'll probably take it, but you get in a bigger venue, bigger churches, you don't preach on hell. They don't want to hear about it. Because the ones that might be convicted of it, they absolutely don't want to hear it, and it'll run some of the crowd off. And when they're in debt, millions of dollars, you got to have that crowd because you got to pay for this thing somehow or another. And these big churches are businesses. Now, our church is big, but it's never really been. It ain't like $15 million big, you know, or whatever. And in debt, $10 million at a time and all like that. You gotta pay attention to what you're doing, or else that thing will go bankrupt. And they sort of dictate what the preachers preach, because I've been to them. I know you can talk to the preacher and he talks pretty solid, but when he preaches, it's pretty soft. You know, you get like over here at Belmont, I know I heard one that I thought put a pretty cushiony sermon out there at Easter. And I believe if he was tuned up and prayed over a little bit, that he could have really boiled the cabbage down here in Belmont, you know. I know he had the knowledge, and I believe he had the desire. He just couldn't, you know, you don't preach about blood and hail and all that. They don't want to hear it. They ain't going to hear it. But I'm getting a little off my message. But listen, we substitute when we're dissatisfied. We substitute everything for Jesus. You know, we're made in the likeness, in God's image. We're made in God's image. And the creature groans for the Creator. If you don't have Jesus in your life, there's something missing. Amen. There's a void there. And you know it just as well as anything. It's just like when if you have been saved and all of us in a little bit you creep backwards and you get back and you get in a backslidden condition, you know that too. You know when just like a while ago when I was preaching about hell. Listen, hell is not a good place. It ain't going to be a bunch of friends partying and carrying on like people talk like it is. It's going to be a vast nothing. It's going to be hot. It's going to be teeth gnashing like dogs chewing on a bone, growling and carrying on. It's got kind of stuff, outermost darkness. My goodness, people just about go crazy when they get locked up in solitary confinement in a jail or something. They say that's about the worst thing you can do to somebody, you know, in a little while, just leave them in that solitary confinement. But they do come feed you 2 or 3 times a day. Man, in hell, you ain't going to get nothing. It's going to be zero, nothing, forever. How long do you think eternity is? I mean, just pause just a minute. My goodness, nobody wants to go to hell. If they just think a little bit, they would prepare. At least stop long enough to hear what you got to say about it. You know, some religions, they tell you that you go and you burn up. Well, if you did, that would be that would be better. It would be you'd burn a while and then it's over with, you know. But it's not going to be that way. That's not what this Bible says. But the thing was, it was not designed for one person. It was designed for Lucifer and the fallen angels. That's all that was supposed to go to hell. God didn't aim for one soul to be there. But you chose. By the sins of Adam, he's condemned every one of us. A little innocent baby, sometime or another, it's going to realize that it's lost. It may be 5 years old, it may be 8 years old, depending on how much church they got. They may never, if they don't get talked to a little bit, may never realize for sure that they're lost. But the first time that they ever hear any solid preaching, if they got a good mind, will know that they're not saved. And they'll, hopefully, sometime or another, they'll feel that in their heart. Because that's the first step to getting saved, is know you're lost. You can't get saved if you don't know you're lost. But there'll be a time when every one of you either know it now or will know it when you're lost. And then, God starts knocking on their heart a little bit. You know when he's talking to you. My goodness, that throat will get burning and back there. And then sometimes I've gripped a pew till my knuckles have turned white. I know one time things wasn't so good in my life. I went to a little old church. It wasn't as big as the middle here, half that big. So I sat over on the back row. Yeah, I'll be all right. I'll sit back here. You won't get to me back here, you know. My goodness, it wasn't 15 minutes into the service. I was on the front row, and then in a little bit, I was on my knees. You know, man, you can't deny that feeling. You can deny it, but I guarantee you know it when he's knocking at you, when it's the true thing. And I'll tell you what it was. It was over me being called to preach. And a fella told me to get out of it if you can. Well, I thought, but I couldn't. So anyway, I denied it. I didn't want to own up to it. But I finally did when the Lord touched my heart enough that I kind of like put the fleece out, when I sure enough knew that Lord, I need to preach. And I look back at my life and I can see maybe some mistakes I made. I'll just be honest with you. When we come over here from Litchfield, and I started coming to Belmont and listening to Brother Gary, I mean, it was just really good. I just grew. I learned and didn't feel like I had the desire so much to go and preach and hunt a church and all that. Been going to church here so much. I just love being a part of Belmont. I've always, and I'll just throw this in, it won't cost you nothing extra. I always try to always measure up to the rest of you here at Belmont, not come over here and be a troublemaker or do anything to disgrace you or to live my life to where we would, just where you didn't kind of have to snicker at me or pray for me, that, well, Brother Lance gets that straightened out, or, it didn't. I know a man that was a preacher, and I don't know what happened to him, but he'd been a preacher a little while. He got drunk, wrecked his car, I mean, that's how you can, I mean, no devil gets talking to you, and just like I'm preaching, man, he couldn't get no satisfaction. Wasn't happy. Didn't know what to do, you know. My goodness, things pile up every once in a while. It happens to me every now and then. There's bills pile up, things get in a little bit of a shape, and that's what I'm saying about myself. I've got to do a little remodeling in my own life. I've got to get things simpler and learn to be satisfied with what I've got, you know. But it's so easy to get caught up in the, I want something else. I want a new one of them. You know, it's real easy if you got pretty good credit to go buy a truck that you can't hardly pay for. You know, you don't even want to stop at one of them dealerships. They'll con you right into it, buddy. First thing you know, you'll be driving out there and boy, it's a dandy truck here, you know. And they send you one of them payment books that looks like an encyclopedia, about $700 or $800 a month or something, maybe $1,000. And I mean, that's how life is. I noticed Rita didn't smile. Listen, I don't know if there's a one of you tonight that's struggling with anything. But I can tell you right now, the answer is Jesus. Amen. I know I'm getting almost as bad as Brother TJ about Billy Graham. But he said if you run out of anything to preach, preach Jesus. Amen. You can't go wrong preaching Jesus. And I'll tell you on this podium right here, this sanctuary, you all have heard some good preaching. Not maybe from me, but you've heard some good preaching. You come to church here a few Sundays in a row, you will know about salvation. You will know that Jesus died on a cross, bled out for your sins, forgiveness, buried in the ground for 3 days, and arose and built a heaven for us someday. And he's coming back, and he'll gather you up. You've heard that, you know it. A lost man won't come here very long, or a woman, and not realize about the plan of salvation, because it'll be told to them at Belmont. You won't have no excuses if you come here when you get there. Jesus may ask you, the Belmont, they told me all about it, but I didn't move. I don't know why a fella don't come the first time you hear the knock, or a girl. Why you don't? If there's personal problems, everybody says, I'm tired of work. I know myself, one time I used to have a drinking problem. And I tell you what, I wasn't, I'm not going to say I was an alcoholic, but I'll say I was a drunk. Sure was. And I'd try my best. I mean, really try, and I did. I'd stay sober for maybe a month at a time. Then the first thing you know, I'd go to town with no intention at all of getting drunk and come home drunk. And why do you do things like that? Why do you do it? I know Rita's asked me, why did you do that? I don't know. And I wasn't satisfied. There's an emptiness there. I was out of communication with the Lord, and didn't really even think about His love. Never even thought about how it feels. There's people. I told a boy today that just dodged a bullet. This afternoon, I just talked to him a little bit, and he went to prison and got shock probation, and he's all shaved up, had on a clean pair of overalls, and looked so good. And I talked to him a little bit, and he's talking about his last guy. He had a job, and they had let him. They fired him, then they hired him back to fix a piece of machinery. As soon as they got it done, they let him go again. And he said, I ain't had nothing to eat for a couple of 3 days, or a couple of days or something. And I reached in my pocket. I had a 20, a 10, and a 5. And I said, here, take the $30, leave me the 5 for my breakfast in the morning. And he said, oh, I don't want to take it. But I'm telling you, that boy right there, I told him, I said, you need to get in a church and give your heart to Jesus. And I said, I'm telling you, you can overcome them drugs and the things. He's just as good a man as you'd ever, boys, you want to be around, young man. But he gets cranked up on that old dope and stuff, you know. And I don't know much about it. I can't hardly tell. I can tell, boy, when they're really flipping out, I can do it. But just an ordinary dope head, I can't pick them out very good. But I told him, I said, you need Jesus in your life. Get in a church somewhere around here. And I said, I guarantee you in a year, I said, it ain't easy. I said, it's like walking down the center of a roof. I said, it's so easy to fall off left or right, you know. But I said, after a year or so, I said, it'll get better. You'll have the confidence that you need. I don't know if he'll get in church or not, you know. I'm going to talk to him some more. Every chance I get, I'm going to stay after him. Because he done something he shouldn't do. I mean, he's all tore up, and these people moved a dead person. He didn't know it riding around and was in the trunk of the car. He said he didn't know it. I don't know, but he didn't have nothing to do with the murder, but he was involved in it. He's got 7 or 8 years on the shelf, I think they call it, you know, on a thing. And he's a good guy. He would make a good truck driver. He would make a good person if he'll stay straight. I mean, he'll be a taxpayer, an attribute to the community. He wouldn't steal nothing from you, anything like that. But let me tell you what, the devil has got a hold in his life. Got a stranglehold on him. Just like this young boy right here. Wasn't satisfied with dad, with going and feeding the cows and milking them or whatever he had to do, and maybe had to gather up that straw back there. And in that day when they gathered wheat, that was some work. They bundled them up, tied it, stacked them out in little bundles. I seen an Amish the other day, field of wheat, and they bundled it, had 3 or 4 little bundles about that big around stacked together. And I thought, how much work was that they couldn't have got a combine or somebody? I mean, they didn't have a lot, but I still thought how much work was involved. So that may have been, you know, that was the way they would harvested wheat back then, like that right there. But still, that only lasts a few days. Wheat's over with. Y'all know living on a farm's a pretty good life most of the time. Usually always got plenty to eat. You know, I told some folks, and I'm not lying, when I was a kid, I said we had a little rough, you know, didn't have just the absolute best of everything. And I said, I've never went to bed hungry in my life, I didn't do it myself. But I said, I tell you what I've done. I've eaten brown beans and white beans and fried potatoes and some kind of hog meat many, many days in a row. And there ain't nothing wrong with that. You can see I growed up, made a big, healthy man. You know, it didn't hurt me a bit. And I guess I satisfied it as well as to be because there wasn't nothing else to get, you know. But that satisfaction that you get when you know that things are right between you and Jesus. That's what I'm talking about, is when you know that things are right. I preached the other day about try to walk in the center of His will. You know, and I prayed today. I said, Lord, help me to submit myself to your will more. Because, boy, Rita, tell you, I'm the best there ever was about talking myself into something. You know, I can justify about anything I want. And my grandfather, my great-grandfather, he used to, I can remember my great-grandfather, believe it or not, my great-grandfather Wilson. And my dad, it's stuck to my dad. His granddad would always say, his daddy would say, his granddad, it'd be my great-granddad, he'd say, son, said you need to plow in the need field. You need to plow in that need field, not in the want field. And you know, that's the thing. We all have everything we need and a good deal of what we want. And we need to learn to be satisfied with that. We need to learn to be satisfied, to love our wives. If we don't, you know, things get wrong about the wives. I'm going to throw this in here tonight. I'm going to marry some folks Saturday. And I told them the other day, I said, hey, they've both been married before. And I said, I want to tell you something. I said, this is an analogy. I said, a marriage is a lot like an automobile. Boy looked at me just, you know, I don't know about this. And I said, you get an automobile, and I said, you keep it up. You keep the shocks fixed on that thing and keep the muffler on it when it goes bad and brakes go out. You take it and have brakes put on it, put a new set of tires on there every once in a while. Well, if it throws a rod and the motor blows up, you just put a motor rack in it. You know, that's a good car. It'll go a bunch more. We put a rebuilt Jasper engine in that rascal, drive her some more, you know. Same way if the transmission goes out, you fix it. But you take an old car and you've let the brakes get bad on it. And you've let the muffler got a hole and she's a bellering and carrying on. And the tires are slick. Paint don't look very good. You ain't kept it shined up like you should have. And then let that car transmission go out. Just shove it over to the side and junk it. And that's what people do with marriages. They let things build up. They let things get wrong in their lives, not satisfied. And the first thing you know, they're in a divorce court somewhere on a marriage that could have been fixed, because everybody that's been married or is married is going to run into some problems sometimes. You keep the little ones fixed, you can take care of the big ones. Between you and Jesus, you can take care of them, you know. He don't hook you up with a wife and all of a sudden tell you, you know, it's forever. I married Rita, it's forever. You know, Donald Hunt, bless his heart, he told me one time him and Judy got in a little spat, and she come in there and packing her up some clothes in a suitcase. I'm sure you all have heard this. If you know Donald, he probably told you. He said, little bit that I went there and got me a suitcase, started putting my clothes in it too. Judy said, what are you doing? He said, if you're leaving, I'm going with you. And that's how we need to be. You don't love a woman for 20 years or a man for 20 years and raise a family with them and wake up one morning and don't love them no more. You may say that, but you ain't kidding me about it. It's just like drifting away from the Lord Jesus Christ. It does. The devil creeps into your life. He gets you looking away. The man that you're working with looks better than your husband does, and he pays you a little more compliments than you do. You got a little time to spend, and you know. And the first thing you know, there's a separation there, little gap. Then it gets bigger, especially if somebody wants to work on it. Listen, the time to stop having an affair ain't after when you throw the sheets back on the bed. It's when that first or second word said that ain't just exactly right at the cash register, when you tell that there's a little something off key right there. You don't stop it after you done made a date and been out partying and drinking a little bit and all like that and done got the motel room. That ain't the time. You don't stop then. You done went too far. But you stop it in the bud when you know it's wrong, just exactly like when you know it's sinful what you do, when the Lord touches you, when you say something you shouldn't say, man, or even think something you shouldn't say, you shouldn't think. You know it right then. I hope I always do. I hope he bears on my heart, even for what I think. Because, boy, we need to let this mind needs to tell his heart what to do, or the heart needs to tell the mind what to do. We need to pay attention to our hearts. Jesus will speak to your heart. And he'll set conviction up in your heart if things ain't right between you and him. And if you're not satisfied with your life, I guarantee you that if you'll come and kneel at this altar or a altar, it won't take you very long to get things fixed up. It don't take Jesus and a convicted soul long to do business. You don't have to hit no rocks and see no sparks and all that stuff. You will know. You will feel that you'll just know. It'll just leave you. I don't know how to describe it, but you'll know. I'll describe that much. There won't be no questions about if you got saved or not. There's no questions or not. I'll bet you right tonight after this preaching right here, you know whether or not you're going to heaven if you died tonight. You know the rich man that had the barns. Here's another example just come to me of not satisfied. He had a big crop, good crop. Yeah, I'm gonna tear my barns down. Well, see, right there is already a big boastful thing. If it'd been like anybody else, we'd been trying to build a shed on that barn, the ones I already had, or build me another one, not tear the ones I got down, just to build a great big one, big show off. But he had a bunch. He's going to have a big crop. He's going to have enough to take mine ease for a while, Well, he didn't know that night the Lord come to him and told him, or the angel come to him and told him, said, "Thou fool, thy soul will be required of you." Big barn wasn't going to do him no good when he had to go see Jesus. You never know. You don't know. We don't have a promise that we'll even get home. But I guarantee you that right here in this moment of time, you can have a promise of a place in heaven that one day you will get to see Jesus. And he'll look at you no matter how rough you've been, how many times you've had to get it right. Come on in. I got a place for you. There's a room up here in heaven. It's going to be 1,500 miles square, 1,500 miles tall. My goodness, can y'all imagine a building that reached from here out to Rocky Mountains? That's how big it is. Way down all the way down past the end of Texas, down to Brownsville, Texas. I'm telling you, it's going to be a place. I try sometimes at night to just think about heaven, but God, He don't give us little feeble minds. John, he saw a little of it in this Bible. You can read about what little bit there and pick out a few things. There's going to be a big river of life and a tree of life and a river of. But anyway, you all get you singers here and come on. Let's get us an invitational song. I've preached enough here.